I've already made videos talking about the worst cartoon characters and cartoon characters that people hate. However, in this video, I want to specifically talk about the worst cartoon kids, because as we all know, some of the worst cartoon characters are kids. This is because kids just don't know how to behave sometimes. Not to say all kids are bad, because obviously that's not the case, but there seems to be a lot of examples of cartoon kids acting out in ways that are straight up insane. Starting off with Eric Cartman from South Park. Cartman is the devil incarnate. He might be the worst cartoon kid of them all. This is because he consistently acts out in the most outlandish ways. Cartman completely lacks empathy and is extremely selfish. He's also kind of racist, saying whatever he wants without caring, like how he openly lets his friend Kyle know that he hates him for being Jewish. I can't be too mad because his racism is kind of funny sometimes, just because the ridiculousness of it, but he does take it way too far sometimes, like when he gave Kyle AIDS or when he attempted to get rid of all the Jews in South Park. The worst thing Cartman has ever done is probably feeding Scott Tenorman's parents to him. So essentially this kid Scott Tenorman tricks Cartman into thinking that buying his pubic hair will help him reach puberty. Once Cartman realizes he had been tricked, he decides to get revenge by plotting the death of his parents and putting their dead bodies into some chili for Scott to eat. If you thought the Teen Titans making Robin believe his dead parents were still alive was bad, this is just 100 times worse. Not to mention, Scott Tenorman is his half-brother, so he's doing this evil shit to his own family member, while laughing and celebrating. For however horrible the Scott Tenorman incident was, it's not even the tip of the iceberg for Cartman. This tub of lard faked having Tourette's in order to say offensive things without consequences. He tried to kill all the hippies in South Park for no reason other than he doesn't like them. And worst of all, when Kenny, a poor character who doesn't do anything to anyone, got a bucket of KFC for the first time, Cartman's fat ass decides to eat all the skin off the chicken before anyone else even gets the chance to eat any, thus proving that this monster has no regard for anyone else's feelings. Cartman transcends just being an asshole. He is a straight up psychopath. I got a lot of comments in my most disrespected cartoon characters video saying I forgot to add Butters, so since Cartman is the main person responsible for Butters' suffering, I'll just talk about it in this video. Butters is basically a sweethearted kid with his innocence still intact, and Cartman for some reason decided that he hates him for it and bullies him every chance he gets, like when Cartman pretended to be Butters on the phone and badmouthed his parents, just so he could watch them abuse him.
You don't even know the trouble you're in, mister!
What'd I do? What'd I do?
Do you think you're tough now? Answer me!
Not only that, but in one of the episodes, Kyle says he's going to invite 3 of his friends to a restaurant called Casa Bonita. Those 3 friends being Stan, Kenny, and Butters. To Cartman's dismay, he wasn't invited for obvious reasons, and so instead of accepting that fact and moving on like a normal person, Cartman tricks Butters into believing that a meteor is about to hit the earth and that the world is ending. To save Butters, Cartman leads him to a bomb shelter and locks him inside, convincing him that's the only way to survive the apocalypse. While Butters is trapped in the bomb shelter, Cartman pretends to be concerned about Butters' sudden disappearance, manipulating Kyle and the others into letting him take Butters' place on the trip. Of course, in the end, the plan blows up in his face, but still, all this proves is that Cartman is the worst. The next kid isn't nearly as bad, but is still up there when it comes to horrible cartoon kids, and his name is Horrid Henry. I got a lot of comments about Henry, and I didn't know who he was, so I couldn't really talk about him, but after learning about this character, I would say he is indeed horrid. He's a Caillou type of character that just gets under your skin with how bad his behavior is. In this one episode, Henry is bitching about the fact that he can no longer have ice cream since the ice cream truck guy left, and when his friends try to offer him healthy snacks, he gets annoyed. I mean, even the fat kid in the back is trying to eat healthy. It really doesn't hurt to eat a few carrots once in a while. At dinner, Henry is excited to eat, but he sees that his mom made carrot sausages, which he doesn't like. I'm not gonna lie, that does sound pretty disgusting, but then all the food became carrots for some reason, causing Henry to flip the fuck out, which I actually don't blame him for. Carrot sausages, carrot mash, carrot cake. I understand Henry's frustration here. Why is everything a fucking carrot? It doesn't make any sense.
Ugh. Brother, ugh. What's that?
When Henry questions this, his mom just tells him to stop being horrid, which I get as he's being a spoiled brat about the food, but I noticed that Henry's parents kind of suck. They just constantly say he's a bad kid or tell him to stop being horrid, which I think is kind of lame. Like, they never explain to him how to behave the right way, aside from comparing him to his brother, which is not helpful for most kids. They only criticize him and reprimand him, which is probably why he acts the way he does. It's a similar situation to Caillou, except Caillou's parents don't do enough when it comes to punishment, while Henry's parents go overboard with the way they discipline him, either telling him to go to his room and ignoring him, or yelling at him without telling him why what he did was wrong. They just seem like they don't really like him, which is why Henry is so, well, horrid. The next day, his mom takes him grocery shopping, and Henry splits up to look for the ice cream, which he can't find as it's all been replaced, causing him to have a temper tantrum in the store. Now, I absolutely hate when kids have temper tantrums in stores because they just embarrass their parents in public. Not only that, but they destroy property that isn't theirs. It's just something that pisses me off, and the thing about Henry is that he's way too old to be doing this. Like, he's not Caillou. He doesn't have the excuse of being 4 years old. And when he gets home, he says it's not his fault they took away the ice cream. No shit, it's not your fault, but it's your fault that you decided to throw a tantrum about it. I understand being upset, but acting out just makes me feel less bad for you and makes me dislike you more. Another thing about Henry I dislike is his voice. I just don't like how whiny he sounds. It's just Caillou but British, and I cannot stand it.
Burrito! We'll blow everything!
Apparently Henry is a lot worse in the books than in the show, which is really saying something because he's pretty annoying in the show. There is multiple instances in the show of horrid Henry living up to his name, like when he ruined Perfect Peter's birthday, when he terrorized his babysitters, and lastly being the leader of a gang. That's not a joke. It's called the Purple Hand Gang, and they basically just terrorize everyone. Another character who I strongly disliked was Dora. Now, I say strongly disliked because I didn't actually hate her. My hatred was reserved for other characters like DW, who coincidentally also happens to be named Dora. Meaning, if you're watching this video right now and your name is Dora, there's a 99% chance you suck. As a kid, watching Dora the Explorer was a nightmare for me. Even though there was nothing inherently wrong with the show, Dora doesn't act like a spoiled little brat in it. All she tries to do is teach kids Spanish, but for some reason she would just get on my nerves. The average experience of me watching Dora as a kid would go a little something like this.
Bridge is missing some pieces of wood, but I want to go look for the big red chicken. Well, maybe we can find the missing pieces. Do you see the missing pieces?
Yeah, they're right there.
Where?
Right under you.
Yeah, there are the missing pieces. Down there. See? Do you see a key?
Yeah, it's over there.
Where?
Right beside you.
Where?
It's to your right!
Gracias. Thanks. You see Swiper?
Yeah,
Where?
he's right behind you.
I don't see him.
He's literally right there. How do you not see him? Bitch, are you blind? Turn around! He's coming!
Where?
Behind you!
Right behind us?
Yes!
Swiper, no. Swiping.
Oh my god. You know, you deserve that. Good job, Swiper.
You'll never find it now.
Even as a kid, I recognized how patronizing she was, with her overly long pauses and her painfully obvious questions. The way she acted made me actively want to root for Swiper to just steal all of her shit, because I was so tired of her. I inevitably ended up switching to watching Diego because unlike his football head cousin, he was pretty chill. The last character on this list is Manny Heffley. Now, Manny is not necessarily a cartoon, but in one of my previous videos I said this. People don't talk enough about how evil this little fucker is. So I'm gonna talk about him and why he is truly the worst character in the entire Wimpy Kid franchise. I already mentioned in my previous video probably the worst thing Manny ever did, which was in the book Cabin Fever, where Greg and his family were in the middle of a blizzard and were barely surviving. This demonic being known as Manny decided to hide out in his room with a warm heater blasting and plenty of food that he didn't share with anyone else. Not to mention, Manny is the reason why this whole family was suffering in the first place, because it wasn't the blizzard that wiped out the power, rather it was Manny going into the circuit breaker and manually turning off everyone's power except his own. Meaning, this isn't just a little oopsie, but possibly attempted murder on Manny's part. Like, if this went on for a couple more days, his whole family would have probably starved to death or froze to death, while Manny would have been just chilling in his room without a care in the world. Also, once Manny gets caught, his reason for doing this is just the stupidest thing ever. He says he did it because no one taught him how to tie his shoes, which literally makes no sense at all. But I don't expect this psychopath to make any sense. There's nothing but murderous intent behind those cold, beady eyes. This is not the only downright atrocious action committed by Manny. When Greg was in the hospital getting his tonsils removed, Manny decided to use the opportunity to sell all of Greg's stuff. And once when Greg wanted to play video games, he couldn't due to his game system not working, only for him to find out that Manny stuffed a cookie into the console. Lastly, when his mom forced him to apologize, Manny makes a spiked death ball out of tinfoil and toothpicks to give to Greg as an apology. What the actual fuck? How is this in any way, shape, or form a legitimate apology? It's a dangerous piece of trash that doesn't indicate that he's in any way remorseful for what he did. And the worst part is Rowley eventually ends up accidentally sitting on it, making him just another casualty of Manny's wrath. The thing about Manny is he simply doesn't care. His excuse for all of his actions he commits is, "I'm only 3, which just shows that he knows what he's doing by using his age to shield himself from any punishment. When he eats all of Greg's candy, "I'm only 3. When he goes on Greg's NetCritters account and sells all of his items before changing his password, "I'm only 3. When Manny commits vehicular manslaughter on a family of 6, "I'm only 3. Well, guess what? You're not gonna live to see 4, bitch." Realistically, Manny is not entirely to blame. His mom is awful and lets him get away with everything. She's probably the one who first made excuses for him by saying he's only 3, and he just copied it because he learned that saying his age gets him out of trouble. However, don't mistake my words. Manny is still evil and is a master manipulator. When he said that the reason for turning off the circuit breaker was because no one taught him how to tie his shoes, that was merely an excuse. Greg explains the real reason that Manny did it, that being that he analyzed the situation at hand and figured it was every man for himself. Manny doesn't actually care about his family. I'm convinced he would let them die in a heartbeat. Plus, he's just freaking ugly.